This video is only to teach you how to find holes in rational functions. It's the last concept you need before we start to graph them. I have two examples of graphs for you that you're going to get used to looking at, and I just want to let you know you don't have to draw the graphs. It's just I want you visual to see. The one on the left, it looks like a line even though it's a rational function because there's a gap in it. And then number two, there's three parts to the graph, and then there's a gap over at x equals 10. So here's our first problem. We're going to find the hole and the vertical asymptote or asymptotes depending on the problem. So go ahead and write down the function. So the first thing you're going to do is factor. So you're going to factor this function, which, oh my gosh, how many times have you factored these functions? Which makes you maybe understand right now why the factoring was hit so hard in the class as far as how many times you had to do it. Okay, so we factored a function. So at this point, you might be tempted to just go ahead and start reducing the function down to the reduced form. Don't do that, okay? Because this part of the work, you will end up getting rid of some information you need. Okay, so what I would like you to recognize is that you have a factor on top that's exactly like the factor on the bottom. Okay, this is kind of taking up that idea of the reduced form. So what you need to understand here is that the whole comes from, so it's coming from the fact that you have common factors x minus 6, and that you can go ahead and cancel these out where they equal 1. So that this is where the whole lives. So where's the whole located? The whole is located at the undefined value. So it's going to be located at x equals 6. So why did I tell you not to do the reduced form? Because now what you need to see is we're looking at a vertical asymptote here. So this is what's left over in the reduced form. So that vertical asymptote is at x equals 1. Okay, so you need to identify the holes and the vertical asymptotes. These are both places where there's a gap in the function. Okay, so now we're going to find the hole. So we're going to find that hole. So if we know the hole is located at x equals 6, what we will do is we will take the reduced form. So we're going to look at the reduced form, which is why you need it. So when you canceled out things, you should have gotten 1 over x minus 1. So I really need to point out to you that the notation is not f here. It is the reduced form. Okay. So we're going to plug in or substitute in here 6 into the reduced form. And that's going to give us our y coordinate of that. Let's see, of that hole. So that means the hole is now located at 6 comma, and then the y value is 1/5. So I'm going to give you a peek of everything here together, and then I'm going to go ahead and start writing the problems the way I expect to see them on your work and on a test. So this is problem 2. What you're going to need to be able to do is find the whole coordinate like we just did. You're going to find vertical asymptote or asymptotes, and then we're also going to write the domain. So this is how I expect the problems to be written out for this section. All right, so here's a problem. First thing we're going to do is factor. And so I've already performed that. I'm going to assume that you had work over here on the side where you're showing the x method and all that fun stuff. Okay, if you can do it in your head at this point, I'm actually fine with that, but there are going to be more complicated ones, right? So like, what if I gave you like x cubed minus 8? That you're not going to do in your head. So I just want to make sure you're aware of that. The next thing I usually do here at this point is I look at the common factors. And even though we're not going to necessarily write it in this order, I'm going to identify that this is where the hole is located at x equals -5. And this is a vertical asymptote, because this will help you keep straight when there's a list of questions you need to come up with. Okay, so B says, or it's going to say, find the reduced form. So find the reduced R of x, and you just write down that form. Okay, remember, this is what the graph looks like. It doesn't look like the actual function at the top. So graph looks like this. R of x. Right, so the next thing you're going to be asked to do is find the domain. And that's why I just said, you know, doing a little bit of notes ahead of time is going to really help. So C is find the domain. So where are the breaks in the graph? We know that this graph cannot be -2, and there's a hole, so it cannot be -5. And so I'm just going to go ahead and write that domain out quickly. So I'm looking at where the function's not defined, and I just labeled where the hole is in the interval notation. Remember, everything's going to be open parentheses, okay, no brackets. So I'm going back and looking at the original function, not the reduced form, but the original function, to look at where the vertical asymptote is. So now you can see where the hole is, and then where we have a factor in the bottom that's kind of all by itself here in the bottom. We know that x is equal to the value that's undefined, so it's -2. So what is that? It is x equals -2. And just to remind you where that would be on the graph is at -2, and that's going to give us that end behavior of the function. So now we're going to find the hole. And we've already established that the hole is going to be located at x equals -5. So which function do we plug it into? If you recall, we're going to plug it into that reduced form of the function, which I'm just going to write out again really, really quick. And we're just going to go ahead and substitute it in. And we will figure out where the y coordinate is. And let's see here. And I'd really like you to keep that as a fraction and not turn it into a decimal. Okay, so keep it as a fraction. When you're doing delta math, that's what they're going to expect also. So make sure that you leave it like that. Also, they're going to expect you to write it out as a coordinate because that's where the hole is located. So just remind you it's -5, 2/3. And you have the characteristics. I'm going to go ahead and put one more in this video without any sound, and then you should be ready to go to the next concept.